to style myself up with my new glasses. I kind of give up lately, but the glasses I thought were cute. And now I feel like I'm kind of giving serial killer a little bit when I look at myself on video, but I'll ask Dr. Celeste. Anyways.
You're looking good.
Thank you. Okay. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to start here. Today, they have all these holidays like World Mental Health Day, World Kindness Day, World Don't Kill Your Husband Day. I mean, I should have that as one of my days. But in all seriousness, today is World Kindness Day. And something I struggle with is always being kind, especially in times like these. And I'm very upfront, Dr. Celeste, I had a whole friend breakup a few years ago, and I sometimes see these women and they walk by me and they bring me into this place of anger. Automatically I get upset and I'm angry. And I said something not so nice to one of them a few weeks ago. And what I will tell you is I'm not always kind. So if you are listening to this podcast and you come here because you think that I am some kind of saint that thinks I'm better than anyone else, I am not. I am a whole hell of a hot mess. I'm just trying to hold it together like everybody else in the world. And I, as a lot of you, my listeners know, I'm struggling with my own grief right now. And I am not always happy. I'm not always kind, but today is World Kindness Day. It's not World Kill Your Husband Day. And so I choose today to come from a place of kindness. And hopefully I do not see that Karen on World Kindness Day, because then I will just completely have to say hi. And I don't want to do that. I know that you probably are sitting here right now and saying, what did I get myself into by coming on this in quotes mental health podcast? But welcome. Okay. So
Thank you.
Dr. Celeste Birkhofer is a licensed clinical psychologist in private practice and an adjunct clinical faculty member at Stanford University Medical School. Department, I should have had that together, Medical School, Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences. She also is an author, and she will be having her book come out, she told me today, within the next year. So we're not going to give a month right now, but I'm just so honored to have you on. And I read your bio and I just said I have to have her on. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for you starting us off with your vulnerability. It's great to have World Kindness Day. And of course, we should all do our best to aim ourselves in the direction of kindness, but we're human. Yeah. And it's really beautiful for you to open up with just, sometimes it can feel hard to be kind.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that if we're all more transparent about our struggles, and that none of us are perfect. And me personally, I'm in perimenopause. So sometimes I have those Tawanda. Do you ever see Fried Green Tomatoes with Kathy Bates? A million years ago.
I don't remember. Yeah.
Okay. So in the movie, she's going through perimenopausal or in menopause, and somebody steals her parking spot, and she takes her car and she backs it up and she crashes into the car. We all have these days, and you don't have to be in perimenopause or anything else to feel angry and sad or be stuck in traffic and struggling with our mental health. And so that's why I want to be transparent with you and with my listeners, because it's called being human, right?
Absolutely. And especially in today's day with so much social media where so many people present just this perfected, curated version of themselves in their life. And then we have this tendency to compare ourselves and think, oh my God, she's either always so nice or always so pretty or so perfectly put together or so successful. So I'm a big fan of people bringing a little more vulnerability. And it's great to show all the good things you're feeling positive about with others. And so we can celebrate with you. But so important that you include with that, what about on your worst days or your hard days or when you're not at your best? That's part of the human condition too.
Well, something I loved about your bio too is that you talk a lot about social media and how, and so that's a perfect valid point before I kind of get into your story. But, I'm on social media. Most of us are. And it's so great. I say this all the time because you can catch up with people like your old neighbor from when you were 5 that you hadn't talked to. But then you're constantly, like you said, comparing yourself, going, like, oh, this person's in the mental health field too. And should I be doing that? Because I'm not doing that. Or am I this, or am I that, or am I pretty, or am I not? And it's so bad for our brains, and it's so bad for us, right?
Yeah. The best thing at our best, again, we're humans. So comparing and feeling kind of less than it happens. But the best thing we can do with that social comparing is to either let it do one of two things. Try to find some gratitude. Like maybe in the comparing, you're actually like, ooh, I kind of have it better off than that person. They're really struggling. And then just take a moment and pause, be grateful, or use it as inspiration. Like some people are doing really well. And then, it's like, rather than just be envious or jealous, is to think, all right, well, is there something I want to work on? I want to kind of do that too. So that can be a positive side of comparison, but you really, really have to be careful to just come back to ourselves and be okay with, I'm working on being the best version of myself, and that's not going to look like somebody else's best version of themselves.
Okay. I love it because it's so true. So I'm going to ask you about you, because I don't think you came on here to talk about me and my social media presence. So let's talk a little bit about, and by the way, can I call you Dr. Celeste?
Yes, okay. Dr. Celeste, or you can call me Celeste too.
Okay, I will call you Dr. Celeste because it sounds really official. So Dr. Celeste, tell me a little bit about you. Where are you from? Tell me a little bit about your childhood if you're comfortable, and then we're kind of going to go into your story.
Well, let's see. I'm the sixth of 7 kids. My dad was in the Army, so we moved every couple of years. And I have a good family, loving parents, but I got into the field, I think, because of my dad was an alcoholic, and my family just did not know that it would be helpful to kind of talk about things if your family's going through hard things. And so I ended up, by the time I got to college, I had a little bit of an eating disorder. I was compulsively over-exercising and turning to food to help me cope. But the outside of my life looked really great. Like I was doing really well in school and I had friends, but I felt depressed and confused, and I didn't understand why I wanted to binge on food or why I was running obsessively running, I think, to just burn off calories. And I thought something is really wrong because I didn't have any serious trauma. I mean, at the time, looking back, having a dad who's struggling with an addiction is hard. But so I went to therapy. And at the time I was a pre-med major at UCLA. And that therapy experience was so profoundly powerful and helpful for me to begin to understand what things had kind of shaped me in a way that I now was struggling. I didn't know how to feel my feelings and accept my feelings. I didn't know how to express my feelings. I also learned growing up to be just a good, pleasing person to everyone, and to do well. And that's one way I got attention in my family, was to kind of do well in school. And so I was living as what I call a false self. Like I was just being what I thought other people wanted me to be, or what society said, oh, this is who people admire, so try to be this. And so I really lost touch with my more authentic self. Like, who am I really? What do I want? What do I like? Can I speak up for myself and be more assertive and advocate for my own needs? I didn't know how to do any of that. But therapy taught me. And then I changed my major to psychology, and I went on to get a graduate degree in the field of psychology. And I've been off and running ever since. I love helping people try to better understand themselves and sort out what was good about the way I was raised and what are the things I need to kind of try to shed now because they're not serving me well anymore.
There's so many people that come on that go into this field because of their own experiences. I mean, I would say 90% of the doctors or therapists I have coming on that have come on the podcast in the past 5 years always have their own story. And a lot of it is because they want to help other people because they were inspired by their own therapist, for example. For me, my own therapist. I'm not a therapist myself, and I don't claim to be a doctor or therapist, but she inspired me to do this. So
Yeah,
it's
thanks.
kind of a pay it forward, really
Yes.
cool thing to be able to do something that you truly love. And at the end of the day, when you put your head on your pillow, know that maybe in that 24-hour period, you maybe might have helped somebody, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That's one of the ways we make meaning out of the pain that we have in our life, is trying to find, what can I do with this? So it doesn't feel like I just had this really hard thing happen in my life that I have to kind of suffer through and survive. It's like, eventually it's nice if you can find a way, like you said, to pay it forward, or makes you a more compassionate person for other people that then you hear are going through something similar.
Do you specialize in addiction? Are there things like, I know that you specialize in talking a lot about like grief and suicide prevention, but do you also have a lot of patients that you deal with that, are like people pleasers, or dealing with, I also am recovered from an eating disorder, and was a people pleaser like you growing up. So I understand that.
Yeah. I used to work at the Stanford Drug and Alcohol Clinic, and I did work in that field for a while. And there's so many ways for us to be addictive. So you see it a lot, there's so many things that we have available, gaming or the internet or shopping or compulsively overeating or drinking too much, or, you can even be addictive about some healthy things like exercising. It's, and so it's just a useful thing to have an understanding about, helping people understand what are they trying to escape by engaging in this compulsive behavior they're doing, or what are they trying to feed themselves? What need are they trying to meet? And if you can kind of get some insight into either what you're trying to avoid or what you're trying to give yourself, then you have a chance to see if there's a different way some healthier way or some way that doesn't have a negative consequence attached to it, that you can be good to yourself. But so I think addiction is pretty common in all kinds of various forms for those reasons, is that it's hard to be in pain. And we go to great lengths to not be in pain. And we have needs and we want to meet them. And sometimes food, like, is an example of one. It's so easy. It's like it's readily accessible. You can have it at any time. So that's not a hard one to kind of turn to. It's pretty reliable. You don't have to count on other people. But
it's a universal thing, is finding some kind of addiction. A lot of times when you're trying to, I don't know if it's the right word is to say heal your broken wounds of childhood, but especially if you're like an ace, like I was, this is all very common. So to take a shift, so you ended up staying on the East Coast, correct? And then got married, kind of had your career. Can you kind of go into like having your children and, once you got out of school and you became the therapist and all of that?
Sure. I landed at UCLA, and my dad finally retired from the Army. So he had been on the East Coast, but we ended up I've been more on the West Coast for most of my adult life. But so, I went to college. I met my husband. We got married and moved to Northern California, where we have lived for many years. Had two children, Wiley and Elise. My son was my firstborn, and then my daughter Elise, who's now 35. And just busy being a working mom. And my husband and I we've been married 40 years now, and we've had some rocky times. We were separated at one point, but I'm so grateful that we went to therapy and we kind of sorted it out and worked it out. Now our marriage is probably as good as it's ever been, which is really amazing. But because there were times when we thought, are we really meant to be together? But anyway, I love him very much. Quite grateful for him in my life. So that's just busy with work and friends. I've always been a working mom. I did take a year off after my daughter was born, but I've always worked and been a parent.
Okay. And so you ended up back on the West Coast. Sorry, I misunderstood that little piece. And then you've been teaching for years, I'm assuming, and as a therapist, but you've gone through your own great loss a decade ago. So if you're comfortable kind of talking about that, I would love to kind of shift into that.
Sure. Yeah. So the hardest thing that I've ever gone through in my life is losing my son, Wiley. I lost him 11 years ago. He died by suicide. And his freshman year, he was just a precocious, loving, vibrant young boy. I would have never suspected that he would end up with a mental health disorder from his early years. But there are some mental health conditions that seem to come on around between age 18 and 20. Bipolar disorder is one of them. And so he went to Stanford University as a college freshman and just began not doing well, getting depressed and anxious and really struggling. And he was eventually diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder, which is a form of manic depressive illness, and spent the next 9 years working very, very hard to recover or see if he could kind of find his footing again. And it was just the most painful. Well, I don't know if it was more painful going through those 9 years of watching this vibrant, loving person just kind of deteriorate, or it was more painful after he died. They were both painful in their own way. But yeah, and it was so unfamiliar to me too, because most of my experience in working with patients, like all of the years, is seeing how therapy helped most people to kind of get back on their feet and to do well. And I really do feel like he tried just about everything. He tried good therapy, he tried medication, tried exercising, and he gave up any drugs and alcohol he didn't do. It's like he really gave it his best shot. And my own impression is that he did have a kind of a biological medical condition, and his brain just kind of deteriorated on him. And it became just so painful and depressing for him that he, on some particularly awful day, he lost hope, and so lost the will to live, which is just really sad, because there have been other times when he felt suicidal and reached out to me and, and made it through. But that's one of the scary things about suicide, is that I do think that not all mental health conditions have suicidal ideation as a part of it. But if yours does, it's scary and it's kind of dangerous, because when your mind gets in that frame of mind of I call it the suicidal self state, it's really tenuous and scary, because sometimes in the worst cases, the people who end up taking their life, they lose touch with other parts of themselves that still have a reason to live. It's like, and if you don't have it in you to reach out, to have somebody kind of help you through that darkness until you come out, and you don't feel quite so severely suicidal, it's very hard. So thankfully, this is a small percentage of people that have a mental health condition, end up dying from it. But sadly for us, that happened with Wiley. And it was the most grueling, awful, heartbreaking thing that I've just ever been through. Trying to recover from the grief of that is so horrific, and it's hard.
And losing a child and what it does on a family. And, I've done so many episodes over the years about just this, but I always try to say, if you listened last week, if you're a listener right now, and I had a psychiatrist, Dr. Horowitz, come on, and he was talking about long-term use of medication. Like, I try to find all different people to talk to, because I think we all would like to solve this problem, right? That's why we do what we do. We want the suicides to stop. We want it to end. They continue to grow. But I do think there is a percentage of people that we can't save them all, but I feel like if there are people that we can save, those are the people we focus on. And I'm just so sorry, because I understand that there's people like Wiley that did everything, took every avenue, spent 9 years of his life fighting it. And it is sometimes just takes over people. So that's the hardest thing.
It really is. It felt like it just kind of hijacked his mind, and in the worst way on, Tuesday, September 30th, 2014. Yeah, it's so sad. And you're right. It really actually shook me up pretty badly with just for me going back to work. It's like, because he had all these things we call protective factors. Like, he was from a family that loved him very much, and he was lucky enough to have resources to be in good therapy and to be getting good treatment and medication and all these things that sadly not everybody has. I mean, a lot of people are really out there struggling without very many resources.
Especially now. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I trusted him, because there'd been a couple of times he felt very suicidal and he reached out for help. And so I trusted that would continue, and it's just hard to predict. But you're right. What I had to focus on is to not feel like, do we even know what we're doing? Do we have treatment that really works? It's like, does prayer work? I remember I prayed so hard for him to kind of heal and to get well. I mean, I tried everything with him, and it's like, that doesn't mean that we don't, all of us, keep doing our very best to help anyone that we can with whatever resources we do have, and to be there for them, and hope that, I'm sure we're making some difference. And I know that, like, our love for our son and the help he was getting allowed him to hang in there for as long as he did, kind of thing. Do I wish it could have been forever? Of course. But, so it's like just still having to have faith that there's a lot that can be done. And if people can reach out, they have a chance. If somebody can be some bright spot or just help them through when they're really in a dark space until it passes a little. Because for most people, there's some reprieve. It's like you feel really bad and then you get a little break from it, and then maybe you feel bad again. And so it's like really reaching out to others. And I think the good news too is that we're talking so much more about this, and your show is an amazing example about how you're helping to educate people. It's like, if we can be there for each other even a little bit, to say, I'm just having a horrible week, or I'm having an episode of depression, and you as a friend say, can I come and just take a walk with you, or bring you some lunch, or just sit with you, or be with you? Rather than in the past, there was so much stigma around having a mental health condition, is that people kept that inside and they held it in, and it's embarrassing or it's shameful to say, I struggle with bipolar disorder or depression or anxiety. Now I feel like it's becoming more common for people to be honest and real and say, I had an eating disorder, or I have some anxiety,
and especially boys, young men, right? I mean, women. Yep. I was just having this conversation with my sister yesterday, who I'm very close to, and I was saying, we were talking about how women are, I mean, not to go off track, but I'm very famous for doing that. How we are we're so supportive of each other. We come out, we like to chat, we like to talk about our problems. Mm-hmm. We like to, that's what we do. And then we talk about our problems, and then we're catty and we say mean things about each other, and then we hate each other, and then we meet new people, and then we talk about our problems, and then we talk about those people's problems. And we're always talking about problems and trying to be problem solvers with the catty thing thrown in there, right?
Yeah.
But then men, boys, I see my husband, and I'm thankful, like you are. I have a good thing, knock on wood, a good marriage, even though I started saying that I was a joke. Hopefully he doesn't listen to this, but I see him, and he comes home from work, and he's so stressed out, and he's just like, I'm going to watch a game, and or he'll go out with his friends, and I'm like, did you talk to your friends about what's going on? No. They don't, it's almost like they don't understand that it's okay. And if they actually could do that, what we have, they would be so much better off. So whenever I have men come on that are willing to, or young boys talk about their struggles, or talk about, it's like a little, I say it all the time. It's like a little, when you're in Girl Scouts and you're rubbing the two sticks together to make a fire, and then the sparks spread. That's what I think this is about. And the suicide prevention piece of it, with my own story, and kind of why I started the podcast, my own struggles with it and my suicidal ideations, were Yeah, I don't want to start a podcast and have everybody think I'm crazy, because I'm not. I'm just
Right.
I'm just like who I am, just like you're who you are, just like Wiley was who he is, and my husband is who he is. And so if we could all just like continue to normalize talking about this,
Yes.
it makes such a difference, right?
Such a difference. And to be there for each other. I mean, we can't fix each other's problems, but I think that's some of the myth that happens around talking is that you don't have to do anything big and special. Just show that you care, then that you can listen a little bit and offer some empathy. Like, I'm just so sorry for the pain that you're in this week or today. I love you. I care about you. I let me bring you some food. You know, this kind of kindness, this is back to Kindness Day, just is such a gift, you know, so that people don't feel as alone with, you know, and men, you're right, our culture, I think we're moving in the right direction because more and more men are also being willing to be a little bit vulnerable, or they're picking a friend or two to kind of say, you know, yeah, I'm having a rough week, or my wife and I are struggling right now, or, and most of the men that I talk to that are doing it and experimenting with it and trying it, it's feeling quite helpful. It's like it feels real and more connecting. And like my husband is experimenting with that, and he now has a small handful of this collection of friends that he knows will go there with him, and they can be there for each other in that way. And then I think the more they do it, they kind of set an example to the other guys in their friend group of like, well, they're doing it, you know.
If they're talking about their problems, then I'm cool enough to talk about mine. On a serious note, so for maybe a listener that's coming here today, and they're, you know, losing a child to suicide is very different than losing a child to like cancer or a car accident, for example. Like, it's all horrible, but it's a very specific thing, right? So when you found yourself with your background of, you know, being a therapist and, you know, having a long history of working in that field, and then you talk about going back to work, how did that happen? And did it take you a long time to be able to talk to people again? Because I can't imagine that grief period. And you talk about like the rocky times with your husband. Can you kind of divulge a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's making me think about quite a few things your question is bringing up. One is that because of my background, I think we really opted to tackle this head on. It's like I treat many families who've lost a family member to suicide, and they opt to not share the truth of that. And I think it's important that every person decide how they want to handle that, because again, there's so much shame around it. And there's also this deep sorrow of, you know, this really special person in your life, this is now feels like a defining feature. You know, their ending feels like it colors in this very sad way. For me, I thought it's like the people who knew Wiley knew that he was more than bipolar disorder or his suicide. He was just an amazing, loving person. But anyone else who didn't know him, all they hear is, oh, this kid died by suicide. I wonder what was wrong with him, or why he gave up, or something of that sort. And so, so a lot of people opt not to talk about it. We instead, at Wiley's memorial, I spoke to it aloud. I said, not everybody here knows that Wiley struggled with bipolar 2 disorder, you know, and I told just enough of the story that he died by suicide, and we didn't hide that. And it felt important to, you know, and I worried like, oh my God, I'm never going to get another patient. Patients are going to want to come see me. It's like, I can't even keep my own son alive, you know, a kind of fear, which is unfair to me because I don't have complete control. And even if I'm a loving mother, or I thought they would think bad things about our family, like, oh, you know, it's like, and I think people are getting more and more educated now to know that mental illness and the mental health problems people have that includes suicidal ideation, it's not a fault of the person. It is sadly just a way that their mind is kind of operating. And again, it's a little deadly mixture. If you can feel despairing enough and hopeless enough, you know, and your mind kind of takes hold and shuts down all the other, you know, voices in you and wisdom in you, it's dangerous. But so I just went back, and it was hard for me as a psychologist that was at that time trained to be, we don't share much about our personal life, if anything at all, but I was out of work for 4+ months, and I had colleagues call all my patients. And when I went back, we had just said it was a family emergency or family death or something like that. And I'd seen patients that trusted me, and they wanted to know, like, who died, or are you okay, or what happened? And that was a tough decision to make. And I chose to say to most people, like, I'm not unwilling to talk to you about it. Do you really want to know?
Yeah.
And for the patients that said yes, some of them ended up saying, well, maybe not, but I just want to know you're okay, or, I'm sorry for your loss. And I'm like, that was fine. But a number of them wanted to know. And I told them, and it was a lot of things come out of that. Like, some of my patients, I was worried then, like I had a number of patients that have young sons, that are college age and all that. And they would be afraid. They felt afraid then to like talk about their child. Like, would it make me sad? And so we had to kind of work through that it's really okay for you you need to, it's critical that you keep talking about what you need to talk about. This time is for you. And, you can't be so. But so a lot of interesting things happened, but it turned out surprisingly, people weren't that preoccupied with it for very long. They were kind of off and running and doing what they should be doing, coming into the sessions to talk about what was concerning them.
I think, though, something that I love about my favorite therapist, because I've been in and out of therapy since I was young, are the therapists that I've had that are human, that talk about, they don't just take a notepad. I talk about this a lot. That's why my therapist, Dr. Nay, who kind of like was on the first episode of the podcast 5 years ago when I started the podcast, she became more of like, now she's more of my buddy than anything else. And and so I think for so long it was like, you have to just be perfect. You're not a human. Yeah. You take a paper and a pen and you take notes, but you can't talk about yourself. And I think what's so important in therapy is it's like a volleying session, right?
Right.
Where you're giving advice. This is just my opinion, by the way. And you are made to feel like, am I crazy? Are you validating me? And I love when therapists use their own examples of, well, this happened to me and here's why, and here's how I kind of work through it. And I feel like the fact that you were able to talk about it and came from that angle, I'm guessing your patients were like, I love this therapist. This is the best one I've ever had. I'm just going to say that. And that's me only knowing you for the short time that I've known you. But also I wanted to say something that I think is so important is that you brought that vulnerability to and talked about, like, I am a human being and this does happen. People cannot make it through these suicidal ideations. He fought for 9 years. You fought as a family for 9 years. And I think there's a lot of families out there that deal with this. And so by you coming forward and you sharing your story, it's going to just help somebody else out there that might be listening right now and is saying, well, I'm going to do whatever I can to save my kid or my family member or my friend from this deadly disease, but I am not going to give up. But at the point where it gets to the point where, God forbid, they do take their life, it's not my fault. Right. And so I think getting to that point where you were recovering from your grief, which I say all the time, we're grieving for the rest of our lives, right?
So true.
Tell me, like, how you were able to kind of get to that place where you've been able to move on, but still grieving, right? You'll grieve Wiley forever, and take care of your other child. Go back to work. Go teach at Stanford. Tell me all about that. Tell me all the things I need to know.
Well, in the beginning, I would never want to, I would take my son back in a second and not learn these lessons, but I learned a lot of lessons going through this kind of severe grief. And one of them is I learned how to take better care of myself, that I'd always been a kind of a driven, get things done, be good at things, and be just to survive the pain of losing Wiley. I had to take naps. I had to say no to almost everything. I only did what was immediately that I needed to kind of cope and get by. So I gave myself a lot of permission to just stay in touch with myself and what I was needing on a day-to-day basis. And that has kind of thankfully transferred onto just how I try to live more my daily life. I don't push myself quite as hard. And lo and behold, I still get a lot of things done. It's like, but I'm much more compassionate with myself, kinder to myself. And in the past, I'd probably be a little high expectations, critical, it's like, I didn't have the bandwidth for that. I already was living with this broken heart, and I needed to protect myself from any other unnecessary pain and distress and negativity. Because again, it was all I felt like I could manage as to what it felt like to miss my son every day. And then the other weird thing it did for me too is that it made me more aware of, eventually it took a while. I thought I would never feel joy again. I just didn't understand how I could be missing this important family member who I love so much and feel happy and joyful. I just thought it isn't going to happen. But what I've learned is that I had to reframe kind of my definition of joy. It's not always necessarily this big, giant, exuberant thing, which is a nice thing to have, but that I could keep an eye out for beautiful things that are still happening in my life, the goodness that still exists. Whereas early on in my grief, I felt like my grief canceled out everything. It's like, and I just started to have to say, I need to learn to savor what's good and positive as an antidote almost to the grief. And so I felt like now I'm much more sensitive and aware of good. I'm not so preoccupied with getting things done and such that I don't miss the simple, small, sweet moments to savor because I needed to in the beginning. And now I'm like kind of grateful. It's like, well, it's softened me up a little bit. It makes me more in touch with small little pleasures. And so that was kind of a helpful thing. And then you mentioned one other thing, let you in. It's like I had a daughter who at the time when Wiley died was only 24. And it's like, I really wanted to just stay in bed forever. I mean, I slept an outrageous number of hours. I'm very grateful that my body was able to do that. It's like, I just didn't want to be awake to my new reality.
Yeah.
And so, but I had another child to love and care about who was also grieving and had lost her only sibling. And so it really motivated me to get up, go give her a hug, check in on her, try to re-find yourself and re-find goodness and joy and try to figure out a way to deal with my husband and I were grieving very differently. And like 80% of marriages end after the death of a child, and I was starting to feel that in the beginning. Like I was so irritated the way he was grieving and I had this very different way of processing my feelings. I'm like, you have to try your hardest to not let the whole family and your world collapse. It's like it would be such an unfair loss for your child, your living child, to have to do that. So it really motivated me to do what I could, and I went to therapy and I found my safe people, the friends in my life who weren't afraid to be with me in my pain. Like people don't want you to be hurting, and they're well-meaning, but they try to rush you out of your grief.
100%. Yeah.
And you're like, I don't feel happy yet. We're like, don't quit trying to make me happy. It's like, I'm not there yet.
It's the human condition where, as I say this all the time, it's like that first couple months, everybody's bringing over food and, and then you hit the year mark and everyone's by, nobody's around.
Right.
And it's not necessarily their fault. It's the human condition. We don't want to be reminded of sadness and grief and that we're all going to die one day,
That's right.
So,
and I want to know that you're okay again, right?
Yeah.
I want you to be okay. Like it's well-meaning,
yeah,
but it doesn't feel good to the person who's grieving if they feel kind of rushed out of their sense of loss.
Yeah. It's a good reminder because, that's part of why I do what I do. And I have friends that have gone through really horrible things in the past few years. And one that went through a loss of a husband, like a little over, maybe close to 2 years ago now. And she just wasn't ready to talk about it. She was not ready to talk about it. And I talk a lot, and I'm going to get prepared because I'll ask you what your sign is that he's with you. But I asked her when I was just back in DC, like, do you have a sign that he's there? And she started to kind of tear up, and she had never talked to me about it before. And she told me what it was. And this is almost 2 years later, and I felt like she's slowly starting to be like, okay, I can talk about this now. So I think it's an important reminder that you brought that up for my listeners. Grief is, like I said, it's going to take your whole life. And Wiley, part of your heart is going to be broken forever. Part of my heart is completely broken for the rest of my life, losing my dad and my sister and my best friend. But out of what you said, by the way, you said something along the lines of, I found like my new self. I found that I didn't have to be so much of a people pleaser, right? So when you're coming out of these things and you are in this grieving process, that you do find that there's new things that you look at in life in a whole different way. And maybe you're not going to be the people pleaser that you were before, right?
Right.
And also, we didn't talk about the fact that you have, out of that great sadness of struggling with, Wiley with his mental health for that 9 years, you had a whole new opportunity to have a family dynamic of, it's a fresh start, it's going to look different now, because on that child, they've taken on for 9 years, having to deal with a sibling that was dealing with such a hard thing. Right.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say those things because you struck me with that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry too for the loss of your God, not just one, but 3 people you loved. And this is something you brought up earlier. It's a very hard grieving process to go through when you lose someone you love to suicide. And I just feel like that needs to get earmarked, because if Wiley had died of cancer, it's pure sympathy. It's like, it's not tainted by, again, these people in the background maybe thinking like, ooh, I wonder, questions about Wiley, or questions about our family, or questions about why wasn't he strong enough, or what, it's just a tragedy, like that something happened to the person who has an illness like cancer. But I personally think of some mental illnesses actually like cancer. Almost like, and thankfully, most of them are treatable, but some are terminal. And again, I don't want to say that in a way for people to give up. You should always try your hardest to keep hoping that there is a treatment for you that's finally going to work, kind of an attitude. So, it's still a bit of a shameful thing. Like, I volunteer running groups for people who have lost someone to suicide. And that's just universally, it's like everybody is so relieved to be in this one group with other people who've lost someone they've loved in this same way, because that fear of shame or judgment is just left outside the door. They can just talk about how much they miss the person, or, how hard it is, and not have to wonder, what are people thinking about my person, or about us, our family, or things like that?
There's such a stigma, and it's unfair. It's so unfair. I will tell my audience, I lost somebody I love very, very much to suicide recently. And there is such a stigma against it, and it's not fair, because I think you talked about Wiley and all the great things that he was in his life and all the experiences that he had in his life, but he struggled with this part of his brain. Just like if you were born with something wrong with your leg and you had to be in a wheelchair, it's just, there's something there. And it makes me sad to think when people are lost this way, that their life is defined by that piece, when they're so much bigger than all of those things. Right?
Yeah,
I'm sorry
absolutely.
to get emotional.
No, you're, again, just showing your humanness and showing your tears are a sign of how much you cared about this person. Really feel the loss.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean, by the way, listeners, and Dr. Celeste, that I am not going to, just like you're not going to stop fighting for all of the people that we can save. I'm never going to, I will spend like the rest of my life fighting for that because it's too important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let me take a shift as I ugly cry for 1 second. And I need to ask you, I need to ask you what your sign is that you know that Wiley is with you. Do you have a sign?
Well, that's that's a little bit harder to answer. I really went through a really hard time after Wiley died with questioning my spirituality.
Yeah.
Again, because I had prayed so hard to a higher power or to God to help him heal and stay alive, that when he died, I was angry.
That's normal.
I was mad, and I felt like, why couldn't this prayer be answered? You know, again, and Wiley was doing his part and we were doing our part. Like, it just seemed so cruel. And so it kind of put me in this scary place of not having much faith in spirituality for a little bit. And then it made me do weird things like question, like, is there really an afterlife? Is Wiley in heaven? Is his spirit, available to connect with me? And then thankfully, after it took a couple years, that loosened up a little bit, and I had to figure out a different way to think that there still could be a God or a higher power that you can turn to for strength and to get in touch with your strength to cope with hard things in life, but that there is no God who's deciding, oh, I'll cure that person's cancer, but not that person's. It's like life just happens, and some hard things happen for people. And so that kind of got me a little over that hump. And then my husband was famous he likes to paddleboard, and every little animal that would come to him near his paddleboard, the seal or whatever, he would, tell me all about it. Get back from his thing. It's like, Wiley came and said hi. I swear to God, it was, because none of the other seals were there, but this one followed me the whole time I was, And at first I'm just like, okay, well, if that makes him feel better, and now finally I'm allowing myself permission to see Wiley in all kinds of things. And one of our favorite ones is whenever the sunset or the sky really is a more magnificent kind of sunset, we call that Wiley light. And we have a little family text thread. And if we're somewhere and we take, like my brother-in-law just sent me a little picture of this amazing sunset in Southern California the other day, and he said, Wiley light. And so it's like a shared way of keeping Wiley alive and in our conversation. And because that's one of the saddest parts about losing someone, is that like all you have is your memories. Nobody talks about them anymore, and there aren't any new stories to tell, and there aren't any new interactions. And so we have to find these ways to, bring his memory to life and bring him to life. And so Wiley light is probably one of our favorites. But the one that I'm really excited about, that I'm allowing myself to do, is to imagine that Wiley is our personal guardian angel, and that now that he's in a place where he's totally healthy and totally capable, this is my fantasy, some people, that don't believe in these things might question it, but it's like, it's comforting me. So I'm allowing myself to think this way, and I am calling on him, because in the beginning it was also hard to, pray to him or ask for his help or something, because he was so troubled.
Yeah.
The last 9 years of his life, he wasn't in much good shape to help anybody, let alone himself. But I've had to change my thinking to think, but he can now. He has all the superpowers that are needed, and nothing would give him more pleasure than helping us through a hard day or a hard week. So my daughter just went through a hard breakup, and I've got him on the assignment to start working on bringing a new wonderful man into her life. And it's like a joyful kind of a thing that I can give him. Sometimes I give him silly, assignments that, you shouldn't probably bother your guardian angel with, but I do. I tell him, and it's like, it's given me a way to talk to him. Talk to him and believe that he's great. Giving back.
Yeah. I think it's important that you said that, because when I lost my dad, I was young. I was 13. And I was so spiritual. I went to church all the time. I was always praying. I prayed so hard that he would survive cancer and live. And when he was taken away, I was so angry that I turned my back on my faith. I didn't, and I was a kid and I didn't look for the signs and all of those things. And then years later, when I was 29 and I lost Julie, my best friend, I said that time, I'm going to immediately I'm not going to be angry this time. So I think it's okay because that's just how you processed it. And you're a mother, you know, that's your child. So it's totally different. And it's okay to be angry. And it's okay, by the way, for my listeners, because faith looks different for everybody. My faith for me is a huge part of my life. But it sometimes I'm like, do I believe this? Like, if you don't question your faith, then I mean, what are we? We need to. But I love that you're starting to see the Wiley light and all of those things, because those are the things that I think kind of keep us going. And I know for me, I don't see signs really from my dad, but I see signs, I have signs all the time from my best friend. And I talk to her like a crazy person in my car. In the front seat, and I pretend like she's there. And so if you ever see me in the car by myself, talking to myself, I'm talking to Julie.
I love it.
Especially lately. So I love that. And the Wiley light, that's a special, special thing. That's the first time I've heard somebody say that. It's kind of like their sign. So in closing, because I've loved talking to you, I want to find out about your book and when it comes out, because you don't really know the exact date, but I want to find out a little bit about it for my listeners and selfishly myself.
Well, it's going to be going into print, or they're working on it pretty soon here, and probably next October, the book could come out. The tentative title right now is called Beyond Quick Fixes: Essential Inner Resources for Good Mental Health and a Fulfilling Life. And the book is really about, don't be too seduced by all these quick, simple things that we think will make us feel happy or good or get us out of pain. It's like, be willing to invest in yourself, in developing yourself and really growing personally and developing capacities to create a good life and to create a foundation of better mental health, like having a healthy self-esteem and being able to deal with your emotions constructively and to use your mind to help you be insightful and self-aware and to have healthy coping strategies and to learn what does it take to form good relationships with people. So those are kind of like the 5 essential inner resources I want people to develop. And I really wanted to write this book so that people would have an easy, accessible resource that they could kind of turn to and go back to. There's exercises in it that help you kind of understand how your upbringing affected you in certain ways and what are the things that you do that contribute good to your life and which things are kind of holding you back and constricting you or causing problems. So if people I have a website that's just www.celestebirkhofer.com, and you can sign up to be notified when the book comes out if you want. There's a link in there, and there's some other information about me in there. But so.
Okay, well, I can't wait to read it. I would like a signed copy, please, because now you're back with me. I'm also a California girl, but I'm on the West Coast. I mean, we're both on the West Coast, but I'm in Southern California is what I meant to say. Jeez. Okay. Okay. Anyways, in closing, I just want to say thank you so much. I loved our conversation today, and it was just such an honor to meet you. For my listeners out there, if you are struggling, please know there's always hope. There's always help. And it's so important to have the human connection. I think that's the biggest gift that we can give each other. If you're struggling with grief right now, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna get through it. Like I said, there's a good side of grief, if that makes sense. I hate saying that, but there's beauty in all different forms when you're dealing with sad things. And I found that in my own kind of struggles lately. So I'm just so honored to have you on. So thank you so much for coming on. And everyone, keep going. You matter. Your story matters. Thanks, Dr. Celeste.
Thank you.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.